Some netizens asked me why I haven't discussed the issue of Indians submerging idols in Canadian lakes, causing serious environmental pollution. And they said this topic has sparked widespread discussion on social platforms like X. To be honest, I use X far less frequently than YouTube and haven't paid attention to it. Moreover, discussions on X are often quite extreme. For example, some people suggest completely expelling Indians from Canada, an overly radical view I don't agree with. On the other hand, the H-1B topic has been too heated recently, dominating most news spaces. As the northern neighbor of the US, the issues Canadians care about don't attract much international media attention. For instance, when Indians defecate on beaches, Indian media quickly frames it as Canadians slandering Indians. But when Indians defecate on beaches worldwide, sparking public outrage, the heat of these Canadian news stories has already faded. Next come various topics about Indians in Canada: theft, littering, bathing in lakes, deceiving immigration authorities, deceiving companies, monopolizing certain industries through unfair competition. To be honest, I'm not very interested anymore because Indians have been doing this for a long time, and Canada's ruling parties, to secure votes, choose to turn a blind eye. Many politicians even shamelessly visit Indian communities to express support for Indian immigrants. Under these circumstances, I believe Indian immigrants will continue to impact Canada, even fully Indianizing the country, and I wouldn't be surprised at all. In fact, the US is smarter than Canada on many issues. They don't openly demand that Indians leave the US because that would be racial discrimination and violate the Constitution. However, their government targets Indians with precise measures. India has served as the US's watchdog for 11 years, and India-US relations were very good during Biden's term and also good during Trump's first term. Now, at a critical moment of confronting China, the US has no reason to suppress Indian immigrants over so-called job opportunities. If you think deeply, it's not hard to see that US politicians have almost no disagreement on taking a tough stance toward India. A series of seemingly inexplicable actions to suppress and humiliate India reflect the deep thinking of the US elite class. They must prevent the country from becoming further Indianized. The Democratic Party, which has always championed immigrant protection, may launch protests and demonstrations for illegal immigrants, demanding Trump's resignation. But when Trump's new H-1B visa policies were implemented, they only symbolically protested a few times. 3/4 of H-1B visas are granted to Indians, and imposing high fees on H-1B visas directly targets Indian immigrants. Creating strong national interest conflicts between the US and India paves the way for deeper actions later. India must pay a high price for any small advantage it gains in the US, or the US will take action against the Indian government and Indian immigrants. All of the US's openness, inclusivity, freedom, and equality are abandoned when national interests are at stake. Americans can do this because their politicians, though hypocritical, prioritize practical interests. Moreover, the US has a far stronger state apparatus than Canada. The US Customs and Border Protection, federal, and various state-level law enforcement agencies not only have large personnel, good equipment, and significant authority, but they also wield far greater power than Canada, a country long accustomed to peace, can match. So I believe no matter how angry Canadians get, expressing their frustration on X, TikTok, YouTube, or Facebook is useless because their government is too weak, and their politicians are 100 times more hypocritical than those in the US. For their own interests, they will unhesitatingly continue to bring in large numbers of Indians through laws favoring Indian communities. Until one day, when Indians make up more than half of Canada's population, turning it into a second India, it won't be a disaster for them because their families can move to the US. Let me tell Canadians a terrifying fact. For example, if Chinese immigrants litter in Canada, it may be due to low personal manners, but when criticized, Chinese people will carefully reflect on their mistakes because littering is also shameful in China. However, in Indian culture, littering, defecating in public, and polluting lakes and rivers are not considered wrong. They are perfectly normal behaviors that don't require criticism. You might not imagine how unique Indian culture is. Your prime minister should travel deeply in India, exploring its cities and countryside, to see how Indians live in their own country. Then you would understand why Indian immigrants bring so many bad habits to Canada. In their minds, those bad habits are just normal daily routines, and they won't change. Even in Canada, they still practice the caste system within their communities. Can you believe it? In a democratic country where people vote, the caste system plays a significant role in society. But in India, this is the norm, and people aren't confused by it. So they bring Indian idols to Canada or produce such idols locally, submerging them in lakes and causing serious pollution. But they don't see this as wrong. If the media continues to criticize them, they will unite to retaliate against the media and even the journalists themselves. Meanwhile, politicians, for the sake of Indian votes, will find all sorts of excuses to defend them. Other ethnic groups in Canada will be defeated by Indians one by one. First, small cities in metropolitan areas like Toronto and Vancouver, such as Mississauga and Surrey, will fall. Then the metropolises themselves will fall, followed by cities like Calgary. Eventually, Canada could change its flag and become the North American Special Administrative Region of the Indian Federation. Of course, I'm saying this jokingly. Things aren't that serious. But Canadians, you don't have much time left. Before your mountains, rivers, lakes, coastlines, and streets are polluted with garbage and feces, cherish them and create more beautiful memories. You don't need to despair. Your ancestors stole this land from indigenous peoples, and now Indians are taking over Canada. You can move back to Europe. But it seems Europe also has serious immigration issues. Is this the cycle of history? What's even more laughable is that your politicians don't manage their own country well, but instead accuse China, 10,000 kilometers away, which actively does business with Canada, of being a hegemonic nation. Why do you always elect these bizarre leaders? Are their brains broken, thinking that Chinese-made computers, phones, washing machines, dishwashers, and air conditioners will colonize Canada?